Hey guys, tonight we begin with the surprisingly mundane yet extraordinary world of polar bears. Those massive Arctic survivors who've mastered the art of making survival look effortlessly boring, while nature documentaries make them appear majestic and dramatic. The truth is, most of a polar bear's life involves standing very still, waiting for seals that may never show up. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here, and let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. At 3 months old, you finally venture outside, and immediately understand why your mother seemed so reluctant to leave the den. The Arctic doesn't so much greet you as slap you across the face with a wet, frozen fish. Everything is aggressively white, the kind of white that makes you squint and question your life choices, even though you're too young to have made any. The transition from cozy den to infinite frozen wasteland happens with all the subtlety of being launched from a cannon into a walk-in freezer. One moment, you're nestled against your mother's warm bulk, breathing recycled air that smells like fish and maternal resignation, and the next you're standing at the entrance to what appears to be the world's least welcoming shopping mall. The wind immediately begins explaining, in great detail, exactly how unwelcome you are here. Your first steps are less majestic polar predator and more drunk penguin attempting ballet. Your paws, which seemed perfectly adequate for den navigation, suddenly reveal themselves to be roughly the size of dinner plates, and about as cooperative as shopping cart wheels. You tumble face first into a snowbank and emerge looking like a walking snow cone, which your mother finds neither amusing nor concerning. She's already adopted the 1,000-yard stare of a parent who knows the next 18 months are going to test her patience like a faulty Wi-Fi connection. The snow, it turns out, has opinions about your presence. It's not the gentle Christmas card variety of snow that humans seem to enjoy. This is Arctic snow, the kind that spent months perfecting its ability to be simultaneously powdery and hostile. It sticks to your fur in ways that suggest it's personally offended by your existence, and when you try to shake it off, more appears as if by magic. It's like being attacked by very cold glitter. Your mother watches your struggles with the expression of someone observing a particularly slow-moving natural disaster. She doesn't offer encouragement or assistance, having apparently subscribed to the figure it out or become a cautionary tale school of parenting. When you look to her for guidance, she responds by walking away at a pace that suggests she's expecting you to follow, despite the fact that your current walking technique could generously be described as controlled falling. The outside world is full of things that your den-based education failed to prepare you for. The horizon, for instance, seems to go on forever in every direction, which is deeply unsettling when you're accustomed to walls that you can touch with your nose. The sky is a color that doesn't have a name because no one has ever needed to describe blue but make it threatening. And everywhere you look, there's more white stuff, stretching endlessly like nature's way of saying, hope you weren't planning on finding anything interesting to look at. Your first encounter with wind is particularly educational. In the den, air was a cooperative participant in breathing. Out here, it's an active opponent with a personal vendetta. It pushes you sideways when you're trying to walk straight, fills your ears with a constant howling that sounds like the world's most depressing opera, and somehow manages to find every gap in your fur to remind you that warmth is now a precious and limited resource. The temperature is what you might call aggressively enthusiastic about being cold. It's not satisfied with simply being chilly. It wants to be memorably, impressively cold. The kind of cold that makes you understand why your mother spent so much time lying down, not from laziness, but from the tactical advantage of keeping as little of yourself exposed to the air as possible. You attempt to follow your mother's massive paw prints, which look like craters compared to your own tentative impressions in the snow. Each of her steps could comfortably accommodate both of your feet with room left over for a small picnic. Trying to step exactly where she stepped requires a level of coordination that you clearly don't possess, resulting in a walking style that looks like you're playing an extremely difficult game of hopscotch while wearing oven mitts. An Arctic fox appears in the distance, pauses to stare at you with what can only be described as professional confusion, then continues on its way with the kind of purposeful trot that suggests it has better things to do than figure out what sort of creature you're supposed to be. You attempt to look dignified in response, which is challenging when you're currently stuck in a snowdrift up to your belly and wearing snow like a very unflattering hat. A snowy owl observes your progress from what it clearly considers a safe distance, rotating its head to track your movements with the intense focus of someone watching a disaster unfold in slow motion. Its expression suggests it's taking mental notes for a future field guide entry titled, "Things That Probably Won't Survive Winter." When you try to make eye contact, it responds by looking pointedly in another direction, which feels unnecessarily rude. Your mother pauses occasionally to look back at you, and you can practically see her doing calculations about whether it would be more efficient to wait for you to catch up or to start over with a new cub. She settles for a compromise, walking at roughly half her normal speed while maintaining an expression that suggests she's questioning her life choices. The snow tastes, you discover through unavoidable experimentation, like disappointment mixed with frozen air and a hint of fish that probably died sometime last season. This doesn't stop you from accidentally sampling more of it as your face-first encounters with snowbanks continue at regular intervals. Your mother doesn't comment on your dining choices, having apparently decided that some lessons are best learned through personal experience. By the time you've managed to travel roughly 50 yards from the den, you've developed a healthy respect for gravity, wind, snow, and the general hostility of the environment. You've also begun to suspect that your mother's seemingly effortless movement across the ice is actually a highly advanced skill that you're nowhere close to mastering. She makes it look like walking on frozen water is the most natural thing in the world, while you're still figuring out how to walk on your own feet without them betraying you. The sun, when it bothers to appear, provides light but no warmth, like a light bulb that's given up on the heating part of its job description. It illuminates the endless expanse of white with the enthusiasm of someone fulfilling a contractual obligation. The shadows it creates are sharp and blue, and everything they touch feels even colder than the things they don't touch, which seems mathematically impossible but emotionally accurate. You begin to understand why your mother spent so much time in the den looking like she was contemplating the ceiling. This isn't a place you visit, it's a place you survive. And survival, it's becoming clear, is going to require a significantly different skill set than the one you developed during your first 3 months of existence. As the day progresses and your coordination fails to improve noticeably, you start to develop what might charitably be called character. Less charitably, it could be described as the kind of stubborn determination that comes from having no other choice. You're going to learn to walk properly, follow your mother without embarrassing yourself, and figure out how to exist in this frozen wasteland, because the alternative appears to be becoming a very small, very cold cautionary tale. Your mother, for her part, continues her patient trudge across the ice, occasionally glancing back to confirm that you're still alive and moving in roughly the correct direction. Her expression suggests she's already mentally preparing for a very long tutorial on the basics of being a polar bear, and she's not particularly looking forward to it. Your mother decides it's time for you to learn about the family business, seal hunting. This is presented with all the enthusiasm of someone explaining tax preparation to a golden retriever. She leads you across the ice with the patient trudge of a tour guide who's given the same speech 847 times and has stopped caring whether anyone's paying attention. The journey to your first hunting lesson involves crossing what appears to be the Arctic's version of a parking lot. A vast expanse of ice that stretches in every direction with all the visual interest of a blank sheet of paper. Your mother navigates this frozen wasteland with the confidence of someone following a GPS that only she can see, while you trail behind her, wondering if there are any landmarks that don't look exactly like every other landmark. The ice beneath your paws makes sounds that range from reassuring crunches to concerning creaks, with the occasional crack that makes you pause and reconsider your life choices. Your mother seems unbothered by the ice's editorial comments, having apparently reached an understanding with the frozen surface sometime before you were born. She walks across spots that make sounds like breaking glass, while you carefully test each step like you're defusing a bomb made of frozen water. This, your mother announces without ceremony, stopping beside what looks like a slightly darker spot in the otherwise uniform white, is a breathing hole. She delivers this information with the tone of someone who's explained this concept so many times that the words have lost all meaning. To you, it looks like someone poked the ice with a very small stick. but you nod with what you hope appears to be understanding. The first lesson involves something called breathing holes. Apparently, seals need to breathe, which seems like a design flaw someone should have addressed earlier. The concept strikes you as fundamentally flawed. If you're going to live underwater, why not commit to it fully? This half-and-half approach seems like poor planning on the seal's part, though you're beginning to suspect that's exactly the kind of thinking that keeps polar bears in business. Your job, your mother explains with the patience of someone who's already anticipating failure, is to wait, and wait, and wait some more. She demonstrates the proper waiting technique, which apparently involves standing very still while looking intently at a hole in the ice that shows no signs of containing anything more interesting than water. Her form is impeccable, motionless as a statue, eyes fixed on the breathing hole with the kind of focus usually reserved for watching paint dry. You attempt to replicate her technique, but quickly discover that standing still is surprisingly difficult when you're not particularly tired. Your body seems to have opinions about motionlessness, expressing them through an assortment of itches, twitches, and sudden urges to investigate interesting smells that definitely weren't there a minute ago. Your mother's sideways glance suggests that your version of standing still resembles someone trying to dance very slowly to music only they can hear. The breathing hole itself is remarkably unimpressive. It's roughly the size of a dinner plate, filled with dark water that occasionally shows tiny ripples that might be promising or might just be water doing water things. You stare at it with the intensity your mother demonstrated, trying to will a seal into existence through sheer force of concentration. The water remains stubbornly seal-free. After what feels like several hours but is probably closer to 10 minutes, you begin to understand what your mother meant about hunting being mostly waiting. This isn't the exciting, dramatic kind of hunting you might have imagined, with chases across the ice and epic battles of wills. This is more like the world's most boring stakeout, where the suspect might or might not show up, and if they do, you have roughly 3 seconds to not mess up everything. Your mother maintains her vigil with the stoic endurance of someone who's made peace with the possibility that this particular breathing hole might be having an off day. She doesn't fidget, doesn't shift her weight, doesn't appear to be experiencing any of the physical discomforts that are making your attempt at motionlessness increasingly challenging. She's achieved a zen-like state of waiting that you're beginning to suspect took years to perfect. You discover that patience is not your strong suit. After 20 minutes of staring at the same patch of water, you've begun to suspect that seals might be mythical creatures, like unicorns or reliable weather forecasts. Your attention starts to wander to other things, the way the wind sounds different when it hits ice at various angles, the fact that your left hind paw is getting cold, the interesting shadow cast by a piece of upturned ice about 30 yards away. It's during one of these attention-wandering moments that it happens. A dark shape appears in the breathing hole not gradually, but suddenly, like magic. Your excitement at finally seeing actual proof that seals exist overcomes your still developing motor control, and you emit what can only be described as a sneeze of triumph. The sound echoes across the ice with all the subtlety of a fire alarm, and the seal disappears so quickly you start to wonder if you imagined the whole thing. Your mother's expression doesn't change, but somehow manages to convey volumes about your performance as a hunting partner. She doesn't sigh audibly, but you can feel the sigh in the air around her. It's the kind of sigh that encompasses not just your recent failure, but all the failures that are undoubtedly still to come. Seals, she explains with the tone of someone who's already tired of explaining, have excellent hearing. This seems like another design flaw in the whole seal situation, though you're starting to realize that maybe the problem isn't with the seals. She demonstrates the correct breathing technique for hunting, which apparently involves breathing so quietly that you begin to wonder if she's actually breathing at all. The lesson continues with a detailed explanation of seal behavior that sounds like it was written by someone who spent way too much time thinking about seal psychology. Seals, it turns out, are suspicious creatures who approach breathing holes with all the caution of someone approaching a suspicious package. They can hold their breath for surprisingly long periods. They can sense vibrations through the ice. And they have an annoying tendency to use multiple breathing holes, making it impossible to predict where they'll surface next. You attempt to absorb this information while simultaneously trying to stand still, breathe quietly, and look like you're paying attention. It's more multitasking than your young brain is equipped to handle, resulting in a performance that could charitably be described as enthusiastic, and more accurately described as the opposite of stealth. A second breathing hole lesson involves moving to what your mother optimistically calls a more active location. The new hole looks identical to the first one, but she approaches it with renewed hope, like someone trying a different elevator button and expecting different results. You take your position beside her, having learned absolutely nothing from your previous sneeze-related failure. This time, you manage to maintain silence for nearly 30 minutes, which feels like a significant personal achievement until you realize that your mother considers 30 minutes to be the warm-up portion of hunting. The real waiting, she explains, can last several hours. This information hits you with roughly the same impact as learning that recess has been cancelled for the rest of your natural life. During the extended waiting period, you have ample time to contemplate the philosophical implications of seal hunting. It seems like a deeply inefficient system, two large predators standing motionless beside a small hole, hoping that their dinner will voluntarily present itself for capture. You begin to understand why your mother always looks slightly dead behind the eyes. She's not dead. She's just achieved the kind of patience that comes from years of staring at empty holes in the ice. The landscape around you provides a constant backdrop of subtle entertainment for your wandering attention. The pack ice shifts and groans like the world's least comfortable bed, creating sounds that range from gentle creaking to alarming cracks that make you wonder about the structural integrity of your current location. In the distance, a confused walrus appears to be having an argument with a piece of ice, though from this distance it's hard to tell who's winning. An experienced male bear appears on the horizon, moving across the ice with the kind of casual confidence that suggests he actually knows what he's doing. He approaches your hunting spot with interest, then notices that it's already occupied by your mother and her clearly amateur hunting partner. His expression shifts to what can only be described as polite disappointment, like someone who just realized they're at the wrong party. Your mother's reaction to the male bear's presence is subtle but unmistakable. Her posture shifts from patient hunter to protective parent who's not particularly interested in unsolicited advice. The male bear, reading these signals with the wisdom of experience, settles at a respectful distance and begins offering commentary on your hunting technique that nobody asked for. "Young one's got enthusiasm," he observes, which sounds like a compliment until you realize it's the kind of thing people say when they can't think of anything genuinely positive. Your mother's response is a look that could freeze water that's already frozen, and the male bear wisely decides that his expertise is needed elsewhere. The northern lights begin to dance across the sky as the day progresses, providing mood lighting for what's turning out to be the world's most tedious hunting lesson. The aurora borealis flickers green and blue against the darkening sky, beautiful and completely irrelevant to the business of seal catching. You find yourself occasionally glancing up at the display, which your mother notices with the kind of attention to detail that suggests she's keeping a running tally of your hunting-related lapses in concentration. By the end of your first formal hunting lesson, you've learned several important things. Seals are real, but elusive. Patience is a skill you don't possess. Breathing holes are basically nature's whack-a-mole game, and your mother has reserves of endurance that border on the supernatural. You've also discovered that hunting success appears to be roughly 95% standing very still and 5% sudden, violent action, which explains why your mother always looks slightly dead behind the eyes. The walk back to your temporary sleeping spot is conducted in companionable silence. If silence can be considered companionable when one party is clearly disappointed in the other party's performance. Your mother's pace suggests she's already mentally preparing tomorrow's lesson plan, probably with additional emphasis on the not making noise portion of the curriculum. As you settle down for the night, the ice continues its constant commentary, creaking and shifting like a frozen conversation you're not quite equipped to understand. Tomorrow, your mother has promised, you'll try again. The seals will still need to breathe, the breathing holes will still require patient observation, and you'll still need to figure out how to stand still for longer than your attention span typically allows. You close your eyes and dream of seals that surface on schedule, breathing holes that come with instruction manuals, and a version of yourself that possesses the kind of supernatural patience that apparently comes standard with successful polar bear adulthood. In your dreams, hunting makes sense, seals cooperate with the process, and standing still for hours at a time feels natural rather than like an endurance test designed by someone with a cruel sense of humor. The wind continues its eternal commentary on the situation, howling across the ice with opinions about everything and solutions for nothing. Tomorrow will bring new lessons, new failures, and new opportunities to discover exactly how much you don't know about being a polar bear. But for now, curled up against your mother's warm bulk under the dancing lights of the aurora, the harsh realities of Arctic survival feel temporarily manageable. Your mother's steady breathing provides a counterpoint to the wind's complaints, and you drift off to sleep with the kind of exhaustion that comes from spending an entire day learning that the world is significantly more complicated than you'd previously imagined. You're now the size of a large dog, but with the coordination of a shopping cart with a broken wheel. Your paws have grown faster than the rest of you, creating a situation where you regularly trip over your own feet, which would be embarrassing if anyone cared enough to watch. Your mother has entered what scientists might call the "why did I think this was a good idea" phase of parenting. The transformation from adorable fluffball to awkward teenager happens with all the grace of a controlled explosion in a pillow factory. One day you're small enough to hide beneath your mother's chin, and the next you're a gangly collection of oversized body parts that don't seem to have gotten the memo about working together. Your legs have apparently decided to grow on their own schedule, completely independent of any input from your brain, resulting in a walking style that could charitably be described as interpretive dance performed by someone who's never seen dancing. Your paws, in particular, seem to have aspirations of grandeur that far exceed your current ability to manage them. They've grown to roughly the size of dinner plates, which might be useful if you were planning a career in snowshoeing, but proves problematic when attempting basic activities like walking in a straight line or turning around without falling over. Each step requires careful consideration of where exactly your feet are planning to land, which makes even simple movement feel like navigating a minefield made of your own extremities. Your mother observes your struggles with the kind of patient resignation usually reserved for natural disasters that can't be prevented, only endured. Her expression has evolved from maternal concern to something that resembles a wildlife photographer documenting the declining stages of a species. She watches you attempt to walk across level ice with the fascination of someone observing a particularly elaborate physics experiment in the failure of coordination. The daily routine of basic polar bear activities has become an exercise in creative problem solving. Getting up from a lying position now requires a complex sequence of movements that you haven't quite mastered, often resulting in what looks like an interpretive dance piece titled "Bear Tries to Understand Gravity." Your mother has taken to giving you extra space when you're attempting to stand, having learned from experience that your radius of potential catastrophe has expanded significantly with your growth. Swimming lessons begin, and you discover that water is essentially ice that's given up on life. The Arctic Ocean presents itself as a vast expanse of liquid hostility, dark and cold, and completely unimpressed by your terrestrial accomplishments. Your mother approaches the water's edge with the resigned determination of someone who knows that what's about to happen is necessary but unlikely to be pretty. Your first attempt at swimming resembles a furry white anchor with delusions of buoyancy. The water receives you with all the enthusiasm of a cold shower administered by someone who doesn't like you very much. Your body, which has shown such questionable coordination on land, apparently decides that water is an opportunity to really showcase its limitations. Your legs move in what you hope is a swimming motion, but which more closely resembles someone trying to climb an invisible and particularly unhelpful ladder. Your mother demonstrates proper swimming technique with the resigned grace of someone teaching a brick to fly. She slides into the water with effortless elegance, her massive bulk moving through the liquid with the kind of fluid motion that makes it look easy. Her strokes are economical and powerful, propelling her through the water with minimal effort while you flail nearby, creating more splash than forward momentum. The Arctic Ocean, meanwhile, remains unimpressed by your efforts and responds by being aggressively cold and wet. The water has opinions about your swimming technique, expressing them through a combination of temperature that makes your teeth chatter and waves that seem personally offended by your presence. Each stroke requires fighting not just the resistance of the water, but the active hostility of an environment that appears to be rooting against your success. Your mother's coaching style involves a lot of patient demonstration, followed by increasingly long pauses while she watches you fail to replicate her techniques. She shows you how to position your body for maximum efficiency, how to coordinate your leg movements for forward propulsion, and how to breathe without inhaling significant quantities of Arctic Ocean. You nod enthusiastically at each instruction, then proceed to ignore all of them in favor of your own innovative approach to swimming, which mainly involves fighting the water as if it had personally insulted your family. The discovery that being a polar bear involves a lot more swimming than advertised comes as something of a shock. During your den-bound infancy, no one mentioned that a significant portion of your future would be spent in water that's cold enough to freeze your thoughts. The recruitment brochure for polar bear life, if such a thing existed, apparently glossed over this particular requirement in favor of emphasizing the more glamorous aspects of Arctic predation. Your swimming lessons take place in what your mother optimistically calls calm conditions, which means the waves are only slightly larger than you are and the current is merely trying to carry you to Norway rather than actively attempting to drown you. You begin to suspect that your mother's definition of calm might be influenced by years of Arctic living that have recalibrated her sense of what constitutes reasonable conditions. During one particularly memorable lesson, you manage to swim roughly 10 yards in what you believe to be a straight line, only to discover that you've somehow ended up swimming in a circle and are now approaching your starting point from the opposite direction. Your mother's expression suggests that this is both impressive in its own way and deeply concerning from a survival perspective. The social dynamics of your age group become apparent when you encounter other cubs who are similarly struggling with the transition from cute to competent. Your first meeting with another young bear your age happens at what appears to be a popular swimming instruction location, where several mothers have brought their adolescent offspring for what looks like a support group for parents of uncoordinated teenagers. The other cub, who seems to have slightly better control over their own limbs, approaches with the kind of swagger that suggests they've recently mastered some basic skill and are eager to demonstrate their superiority. This leads to an awkward social interaction that resembles two teenagers trying to impress each other while simultaneously trying not to fall over. You attempt to look casual and competent, which is challenging when you're currently standing in a way that requires active concentration to avoid toppling sideways. Your attempts at looking intimidating during these social encounters produce results that are more endearing than threatening. You try to adopt the kind of posture you've seen in adult bears: shoulders squared, head held high, eyes narrowed with casual menace. But the effect is somewhat undermined by the fact that you're still figuring out how to arrange your limbs in a way that doesn't require constant attention. The result is less fearsome predator and more large puppy trying to remember how to stand. The other cubs seem to be experiencing similar challenges with the gap between their aspirations and their abilities. Interactions become a delicate dance of trying to assert dominance while avoiding any situations that might actually test your claimed capabilities. Everyone wants to be the most impressive bear in the group, but nobody wants to be the one who has to prove it by doing something that might reveal their fundamental incompetence. Your mother's patience during this phase borders on the superhuman. She watches your attempts at basic coordination with the kind of stoic endurance usually reserved for people enduring root canal surgery performed by someone who's having a bad day. Her expression never quite crosses into despair, but it flirts with the border between hope and resignation, like someone watching a coin flip that's been spinning in the air for several hours. The swimming lessons continue with varying degrees of success, where success is measured primarily by your ability to avoid drowning while making forward progress through the water. Your technique gradually evolves from panic flailing to controlled panic flailing, which your mother seems to consider a significant improvement. You begin to understand why she looks tired all the time. Teaching someone to swim when their natural instinct is to treat water as a hostile foreign substance requires reserves of patience that would challenge a saint. By the end of your awkward phase, you've achieved what could generously be called basic competence in the fundamental skills of polar bear existence. You can walk without falling over most of the time, swim without immediate risk of drowning, and maintain your balance on ice that isn't actively trying to dump you into the ocean. These might seem like modest accomplishments, but given your starting point, they represent the kind of progress that would be inspiring if anyone were keeping track of such things. Your mother's expression during this period suggests she's learned to find satisfaction in small victories. When you successfully swim in a straight line for more than 20 yards, her look of approval is genuine, if tinged with the kind of relief usually associated with successful completion of emergency surgery. She's recalibrated her expectations to match your demonstrated abilities, which means that basic competence now counts as a significant achievement. The growth spurts continue throughout this phase, bringing new challenges as your body seems determined to keep changing the rules of coordination just as you're starting to figure them out. Each morning brings the possibility that some new part of you has grown overnight, requiring adjustments to your understanding of where your extremities are located in space. It's like trying to learn to drive a car that keeps changing size while you're behind the wheel. Your mother begins leaving you alone for longer periods, presumably to preserve what remains of her sanity. Left to your own devices, you embark on small adventures that invariably end in mild peril and valuable life lessons about why mothers tell you not to do certain things. The experience of falling through thin ice provides immediate and comprehensive education about why experienced Arctic residents treat ice with respectful caution. The water receives you with the kind of hostile welcome usually reserved for people who show up uninvited to important events, and your extraction from the situation requires more scrambling and less dignity than you would prefer. The fox watches your impromptu swimming lesson with what appears to be a combination of concern and entertainment, maintaining a safe distance while you work out the mechanics of getting back onto solid ice. Your technique for ice water egress involves a lot of clawing, some innovative cursing, and several false starts that result in sliding back into the water just as you think you've solved the problem. When you finally manage to haul yourself back onto reliable ice, you're thoroughly soaked, moderately hypothermic, and significantly more educated about the importance of testing ice thickness before committing your full weight to it. The fox's expression suggests it's taking notes about bear judgment for future reference, and possibly reconsidering the wisdom of your partnership. Your return to your mother's designated waiting area happens several hours later than originally planned, and your appearance suggests that the intervening time has been eventful in ways that she probably won't approve of. You arrive looking like disaster happened to you personally, which is a reasonably accurate assessment of your solo adventure experience. The fox accompanies you part of the way back, then veers off toward its own destinations with what appears to be relief at concluding your shared adventure without any major casualties. Its departure involves a brief pause and what might be a nod of acknowledgement, as if to say that while your time together has been educational, it's probably best if you don't make a habit of this kind of thing. Your mother's reaction to your condition when she returns from her own hunting expedition provides immediate confirmation that your assessment of her likely response was accurate. Her expression cycles through several distinct phases. Initial relief that you're alive, followed by resignation at your appearance, culminating in the kind of patient exasperation that suggests she's already calculating how much additional supervision you're going to require going forward. Suddenly, you're growing faster than bamboo on espresso. Your appetite becomes legendary. You could eat a seal and still eye your mother's lunch with hopeful interest. This presents logistical challenges, as seals have not increased their availability to accommodate your expanding stomach. The transformation from awkward teenager to oversized eating machine happens with the kind of dramatic efficiency usually associated with time-lapse photography of plant growth. One day you're a moderately sized bear with normal dietary requirements, and the next you've become a furry garbage disposal with legs, capable of consuming quantities of food that would challenge a small restaurant. Your stomach seems to have expanded its operational parameters without consulting the rest of your body, resulting in a situation where your appetite significantly exceeds your hunting capabilities. Your mother observes this development with the expression of someone watching their grocery budget dissolve in real time. She's been managing the food acquisition responsibilities for your small family unit with reasonable efficiency, but your new caloric requirements have shifted the mathematical balance from manageable to how is this physically possible? Her hunting expeditions, which previously yielded sufficient food for both of you with some left over, now barely keep pace with your expanding nutritional demands. The daily routine of Arctic survival becomes dominated by food-related considerations. Your mother's day now consists primarily of hunting, feeding you, hunting again, feeding you again, and then lying down with the exhausted expression of someone who's just completed a marathon, only to discover that another marathon is scheduled for later in the afternoon. Your contribution to this routine mainly involves eating everything that's offered, and then looking hopefully for more. Hunting attempts become more serious, though serious is relative when you still occasionally forget which end of a seal is which. Your mother's approach to your hunting education shifts from gentle encouragement to something that resembles intensive job training for someone whose employment depends on immediate competency improvement. The lessons become longer, more frequent, and conducted with the kind of focused intensity that suggests your continued survival depends on rapid skill acquisition. Your exploration of the cave system proceeds smoothly until you make the classic mistake of assuming that any passage you can enter, you can also exit. This turns out to be problematic when you discover a chamber that's accessible through a tunnel that's just wide enough for forward movement, but too narrow for turning around. The fox, being considerably smaller and more flexible, has no trouble reversing course, but you find yourself in the awkward position of being temporarily trapped in a beautiful but cramped ice chamber with limited options for escape. The solution to your predicament requires a combination of creative, problem-solving and undignified scrambling that you hope the fox won't remember in detail. Eventually, you manage to extract yourself from the ice chamber through a process that involves more sliding backward than walking, leaving you with a new appreciation for the importance of considering exit strategies before entering confined spaces. The fox observes your extraction process with what appears to be a mixture of amusement and professional interest, as if taking mental notes about bear behavior for future reference. When you finally emerge from the cave system, slightly scuffed but otherwise intact, it seems to regard you with the kind of tolerance usually reserved for well-meaning but incompetent relatives. Your adventures with the fox continue with an investigation of strange smells that turn out to be significantly less interesting than they initially seemed. The Arctic produces a variety of odors that range from mildly concerning to actively alarming, and you discover that your curiosity about unusual scents consistently exceeds your ability to interpret what those scents might indicate about local conditions. One particularly memorable smell investigation leads you to what appears to be the remains of someone else's hunting success, abandoned after the choicest portions had been consumed. The fox approaches the leftovers with appropriate caution, while you dive in with the enthusiasm of someone who hasn't eaten in several hours and has temporarily forgotten about concepts like food safety and checking whether something belongs to a larger, more dangerous bear. Your salvage feast is interrupted by the arrival of an aggressive, snowy owl who apparently considers the area to be under its jurisdiction. The owl's approach is announced by a series of sharp calls that seem designed to convey both territorial authority and personal displeasure with your presence. The fox immediately demonstrates the wisdom of strategic retreat, while you remain focused on the unexpected meal until the owl's protests become impossible to ignore. The encounter with the owl becomes an educational experience about pecking order, delivered through a curriculum that involves a lot of being swooped at by something with sharp talons and strong opinions about property rights. The owl's harassment technique involves diving from altitude while making sounds that suggest you've personally offended its family, its profession, and its basic understanding of how Arctic etiquette is supposed to work. Your response to aerial harassment involves a combination of confused swatting and undignified ducking that provides entertainment for the fox and satisfaction for the owl. Eventually, you conclude that the leftover meal isn't worth the ongoing aerial bombardment and retreat to a respectful distance, leaving the owl in triumphant possession of scraps you weren't particularly enjoying anyway. The fox's reaction to your conflict resolution skills seems to involve a reassessment of your capabilities as an Arctic survival partner. Its expression suggests it's beginning to understand why young bears are typically accompanied by adult supervision, and why that supervision might be more necessary than initially apparent. Your attempt at independent fishing provides another opportunity for educational failure. The fox leads you to what appears to be a productive fishing spot, where the ice is thin enough to reveal the water underneath, but thick enough to support bear weight activity. The technique, as demonstrated by the fox, involves patience, precision, and careful attention to the movement of fish beneath the ice surface. Your interpretation of fishing technique involves significantly less patience and precision, compensated by increased enthusiasm and confidence in your ability to catch fish through determination rather than skill. This approach proves less successful than anticipated when your energetic attempt to grab a fish results in breaking through the ice and discovering that Arctic water is exactly as cold as it looks, only more so. Your mother watches your efforts with the expression of someone observing a particularly slow-motion train wreck. Your hunting technique has evolved from completely hopeless to occasionally shows promise, But the gap between your caloric needs and your hunting success rate continues to present challenges that require creative problem solving. She begins supplementing your education with advanced techniques that she previously planned to introduce gradually over several more months. The first successful hunt happens more through luck than skill, but provides a crucial boost to your confidence and your mother's faith in your eventual survival prospects. The seal in question apparently fails to notice your approach until it's too late to escape, possibly because it's distracted by something else, or possibly because your technique has improved enough to be occasionally effective. The result is the same: actual food that you caught yourself, rather than food that your mother caught and graciously shared. Your reaction to your first successful hunt involves a level of celebration that's probably excessive for the capture of a single seal, but feels entirely appropriate given how long you've been working toward this moment. You treat the achievement like a personal victory over the forces of Arctic hostility, which is accurate enough given your recent track record of hunting-related failures. Your mother's response to your hunting success combines genuine pride with obvious relief. Her expression suggests she's been hoping for this development for quite some time, and its arrival feels like confirmation that her investment in your education might eventually pay dividends. She allows you to enjoy your triumph for an appropriate period before gently suggesting that one successful hunt doesn't constitute mastery of the skill. The territorial encounters with other bears become more complex as your size and confidence increase. You're now large enough to be taken seriously as a potential threat, but experienced enough to recognize when you're outmatched by opponents with more skills or better judgment. These interactions require a delicate balance of asserting your presence without provoking conflicts that you're not equipped to handle. Your first serious territorial dispute happens when you encounter another young bear near what you've begun to consider your preferred hunting area. The other bear seems to have similar ideas about territorial ownership, leading to the kind of standoff that resembles two teenagers arguing over a parking space. Both of you want to assert dominance, but neither is particularly eager to engage in actual combat that might result in injury or public embarrassment. The resolution of the territorial dispute involves a lot of posturing, some half-hearted threats, and eventually a mutual agreement to hunt in different areas without officially acknowledging that anyone backed down. Your mother observes this interaction from a distance with what appears to be approval of your conflict resolution skills, though her expression also suggests she's ready to intervene if your diplomatic approach fails. You're getting bigger, stronger, and more confident, which unfortunately makes your failures more spectacular and your successes more accidental. Your increased size means that when things go wrong, they go wrong on a larger scale, with more dramatic consequences. A missed hunting attempt now involves more flailing and bigger splashes, while successful hunts require more coordination and generate more cleanup afterward. Learning to read ice conditions becomes a crucial skill that you acquire through trial and error, with emphasis on error. The Arctic ice presents a constantly changing puzzle of safe and unsafe areas, and your education in ice assessment happens through a series of experiences that range from mildly concerning to genuinely life-threatening. Your mother's instruction in ice evaluation techniques becomes more urgent as your independence approaches. The ice itself seems determined to teach you respect through practical demonstration. Conditions that look identical to your inexperienced eye can vary dramatically in their load-bearing capabilities, and the consequences of misjudgment range from embarrassing splashes to potentially dangerous situations that require immediate problem-solving. You begin to develop the kind of healthy paranoia about ice conditions that characterizes successful Arctic residents. Your growing awareness that independence is approaching like an unwelcome deadline adds urgency to your skill development efforts. Your mother's instruction style becomes more focused and intensive, as if she's cramming a semester's worth of material into the final weeks before an important exam. The lessons cover advanced topics like weather prediction, territorial management, and the social dynamics of adult bear interactions. The seasonal changes bring different challenges that require adaptation of your developing techniques. Spring ice behaves differently than winter ice. Summer hunting requires different strategies than cold weather approaches, and fall preparation involves skills that you're only beginning to understand. Each season presents new variables that affect hunting success, territorial management, and basic survival strategies. Migration patterns of prey create feast or famine cycles that test your ability to adapt to changing conditions. The seal's behavior varies with weather, ice conditions, and their own seasonal patterns, requiring flexibility in hunting techniques and expectations about success rates. You begin to understand that Arctic survival involves constant adaptation to variables that you can't control but must learn to anticipate. The ice continues its eternal process of breaking up and reforming in endless patterns that create new challenges and opportunities. Your ability to read these patterns and adjust your strategies accordingly becomes increasingly important as your independence approaches. The ice becomes both hunting platform and constant reminder that the Arctic environment can change without warning or consideration for your plans. Other Arctic wildlife provides ongoing entertainment and education as you observe their own survival strategies. The Arctic foxes, seals, walruses, and various birds each have their own approaches to managing the challenges of Arctic existence, and their successes and failures provide useful information about adapting to environmental conditions. You begin to understand that you're part of a larger ecosystem where everyone is trying to solve similar problems with different resources and capabilities. Your mother's confidence in your eventual survival prospects improves gradually as your skills develop and your judgment shows signs of maturing. Her instruction style evolves from intensive supervision to occasional guidance, with increasing periods where she allows you to make your own decisions and learn from the consequences. This transition feels both liberating and terrifying, as each successful independent action brings you closer to the day when you'll be entirely responsible for your own survival. The growing awareness that your childhood is approaching its conclusion adds weight to every lesson and significance to every small success. Your mother's patient instruction takes on the quality of final preparation for an exam that you can't afford to fail. The skills you're learning now will determine whether your transition to independence results in successful adulthood or becomes another cautionary tale about the challenges of Arctic survival. By the end of this phase, you've achieved what could reasonably be called basic competence in the fundamental requirements of polar bear existence. You can hunt with occasional success, read ice conditions with reasonable accuracy, manage territorial interactions without immediate disaster, and survive brief periods of independence without requiring rescue. These accomplishments represent the foundation for eventual success as an adult bear, though you're beginning to understand that mastery of these skills will require years of additional experience and probably a few more educational disasters along the way. At 2 years old, your mother delivers the news with all the ceremony of someone cancelling a subscription service. You're on your own. She doesn't pack you a lunch or give you a forwarding address. She simply starts walking in a different direction and doesn't look back, leaving you standing on an ice floe feeling like someone who just got uninvited to their own birthday party. The moment arrives without fanfare or emotional preparation, which seems typical of how your mother handles major life transitions. One morning, after what appears to be a routine hunting lesson, she pauses beside a breathing hole and delivers the information with the same tone she might use to comment on ice conditions. "This is where we part ways," she says, or at least conveys through the kind of meaningful look that doesn't require words but leaves no room for misinterpretation. Your initial reaction involves a complex mixture of disbelief, panic, and inappropriate confidence in your own abilities. Surely she doesn't mean immediately, you think. Surely there's some kind of transition period, maybe a few practice runs at independence, perhaps a gradual reduction in maternal supervision that allows you to adjust to the concept over time. The reality proves to be significantly more abrupt and final than your expectations had prepared you for. Your mother's departure technique involves the kind of matter-of-fact efficiency that suggests she's been planning this moment for quite some time. She doesn't offer last-minute advice, doesn't provide emergency contact information, doesn't even pause for what humans might consider an appropriate farewell gesture. She simply begins walking across the ice in a direction that clearly doesn't include you, maintaining the steady pace of someone who has places to be and schedules to keep. You follow her for the first 100 yards or so, operating under the assumption that this might be some kind of test, or perhaps a particularly elaborate hunting lesson that requires you to track your instructor. Your mother's response to your following behavior involves a single backward glance that communicates volumes about the permanence of the current situation. The look suggests that continuing to follow her would be both pointless and potentially embarrassing for everyone involved. The realization that you're actually, genuinely, permanently on your own arrives with the kind of clarity that usually accompanies major disasters. You stand on the ice floe watching your mother's figure grow smaller in the distance, and the Arctic suddenly feels significantly larger and more hostile than it did when you had backup. The landscape that seemed manageable when you were part of a team now presents itself as an endless expanse of challenges that you're expected to handle entirely through your own resources. Your first weeks of independence are a masterclass in learning things the hard way. Turns out, hunting seals is significantly more difficult when you don't have a 600-pound backup plan nearby. The techniques that seem straightforward when demonstrated by your mother reveal themselves to be significantly more complex when you're responsible for every aspect of the process, from location selection to execution to cleanup. The breathing holes that previously yielded regular meals under your mother's guidance now seem to mock your efforts with their stubborn refusal to produce cooperative seals. You spend a lot of time staring at breathing holes with the intense focus of someone trying to will lottery numbers into existence. But the seals appear to have developed an ability to sense your desperation and adjust their breathing schedules accordingly. Your hunting technique during this period could charitably be described as enthusiastic, and more accurately characterized as a comprehensive demonstration of everything that can go wrong when confidence exceeds competence. You approach each breathing hole with the kind of optimism that suggests you haven't quite grasped the statistical realities of seal hunting success rates for inexperienced bears. The first major challenge of independent life arrives in the form of weather that your mother would have anticipated and prepared for, but which catches you completely unprepared. The blizzard approaches with the kind of dramatic intensity that suggests the Arctic has been saving up its hostility for just this moment. You spend the storm huddled in whatever shelter you can improvise, learning that weather prediction is a crucial skill that no one bothered to include in your formal education. The blizzard provides several days of intensive education about the importance of advanced planning, appropriate shelter selection, and the value of having more than one day's worth of food in reserve. You emerge from the experience cold, hungry, and significantly more respectful of weather patterns, but with a new appreciation for your mother's ability to anticipate and prepare for Arctic conditions that would have challenged your survival if you'd encountered them without warning. Your first successful solo hunt happens during the third week of independence and provides the kind of confidence boost that's desperately needed after a series of failures that have made you question your fundamental competence as a polar bear. The seal in question cooperates with the process in a way that suggests either your technique has improved or your luck has temporarily shifted in your favor. The result is actual food that you caught entirely through your own efforts, rather than food that someone else provided out of parental obligation. The celebration of your first successful solo hunt is interrupted by the arrival of a larger male bear who seems to have opinions about your hunting location and your presence in what he apparently considers his territory. The encounter provides immediate education about the social dynamics of adult bear interactions, and the realization that successful hunting is only one component of independent survival. Territorial management, it turns out, requires a completely different skill set that involves reading social signals and making rapid decisions about when to assert yourself and when to tactically withdraw. Your first territorial negotiation involves a lot of posturing, some strategic retreating, and the kind of diplomatic complexity that makes simple hunting seem straightforward by comparison. The larger bear's approach to territorial discussion involves the kind of physical presence that suggests violence is definitely an option, while your response demonstrates the wisdom of recognizing when you're outmatched by someone with more experience and significantly more muscle mass. The resolution of the territorial dispute involves your tactical withdrawal to a different hunting area, accompanied by the kind of dignified retreat that allows both parties to maintain face while acknowledging the practical realities of the situation. You learn that choosing your battles is an important component of survival, and that there's no shame in recognizing when someone else has a stronger claim to a particular piece of ice. Establishing temporary territory becomes a priority that requires balancing several competing considerations: proximity to productive hunting areas, defensibility against other bears, access to fresh water, and shelter options for weather emergencies. Your first territorial selection process involves a lot of trial and error, with emphasis on error, as you learn to evaluate ice conditions, assess strategic advantages, and predict how various locations might serve your needs across different seasonal conditions. Your chosen territory consists of what you generously describe as a promising stretch of ice that offers reasonable hunting opportunities and acceptable shelter options. Less generously, It could be described as real estate that other bears have evaluated and rejected, but which meets your immediate needs and falls within your current defensive capabilities. The important thing is that it's yours, even if yours is a temporary and somewhat negotiable concept in the context of Arctic territorial dynamics. The daily routine of independent survival requires significantly more planning and energy than you anticipated during your supervised childhood. Tasks that your mother handled with efficient competence now require your full attention and often multiple attempts before achieving acceptable results. Simple activities like finding appropriate shelter, predicting weather patterns, and maintaining adequate food reserves become full-time occupations that require constant vigilance and decision-making. Your mother's absence becomes most apparent during crisis situations that would have benefited from experienced guidance. When you encounter problems that exceed your current problem-solving capabilities, the automatic response of looking around for maternal assistance reveals the depth of your dependence on backup systems that no longer exist. You're forced to develop self-reliance at a pace that feels like emergency skill acquisition, rather than gradual competence building. The psychological adjustment to independence proves to be as challenging as the practical components of survival. The knowledge that you're entirely responsible for your own welfare creates a constant background tension that affects every decision and colors every interaction with the environment. Mistakes that were previously learning opportunities with safety nets now carry consequences that could affect your long-term survival prospects. You establish yourself on what you generously call your territory, a stretch of ice that other bears have apparently deemed not worth fighting over, which should probably concern you more than it does. You develop routines that make you feel like a proper adult bear: morning patrol of breathing holes, afternoon naps, evening contemplation of the harsh indifference of existence. Your territorial establishment process involves what real estate professionals might call making compromises based on available options and current market conditions. The stretch of ice you claim as your own isn't exactly prime Arctic real estate, but it offers several advantages that make it suitable for a bear of your current experience level and defensive capabilities. It's far enough from established territories to avoid immediate conflict with more experienced bears, close enough to productive hunting areas to support your food requirements, and geographically positioned to provide reasonable shelter options during adverse weather conditions. The morning patrol routine develops as a way to impose structure on the potentially overwhelming freedom of independent life. You begin each day with a systematic survey of your territorial boundaries, checking breathing holes for seal activity, assessing ice conditions for safety and hunting potential, and maintaining awareness of any changes in the local environment that might affect your strategic position. This routine serves both practical and psychological functions, providing necessary information about your immediate circumstances while creating the kind of predictable schedule that makes the vast uncertainty of Arctic existence feel more manageable. Your patrol technique evolves from the anxious thoroughness of someone who's not entirely sure what they're looking for to the efficient competence of someone who's learned to distinguish between important information and background noise. You develop the ability to assess breathing hole productivity through subtle indicators, predict ice stability through visual and auditory cues, and detect the presence of other bears through scent markers and territorial signs that you're gradually learning to interpret. The afternoon nap portion of your routine serves multiple functions that go beyond simple rest and relaxation. It's an opportunity to process the morning's observations, plan hunting strategies for the evening, and maintain the kind of energy reserves that successful Arctic survival requires. The nap also represents a small luxury that helps maintain morale during the challenging adjustment to independent life. A reminder that survival can include moments of comfort and relaxation if you manage your resources effectively. Evening contemplation becomes an unexpectedly important component of your daily routine, providing time to assess your progress, consider future challenges, and maintain perspective on your place in the larger Arctic ecosystem. These reflective periods help you process the psychological demands of independence while developing the kind of philosophical resilience that long-term survival requires. You contemplate the harsh indifference of existence with the growing wisdom of someone who's learning to find meaning and satisfaction in the successful completion of basic survival tasks. Social interactions with other bears during this period range from awkward to potentially fatal, with most encounters falling somewhere in the middle of that spectrum. Your inexperience with adult bear social dynamics creates situations that require careful navigation to avoid either embarrassing yourself or provoking conflicts that could have serious consequences for your territorial security and personal safety. Your first encounter with another young male bear happens during a hunting expedition that takes you to the edge of your established territory. The other bear appears to be roughly your age and experience level, engaged in the same kind of tentative territorial establishment that characterizes your own current situation. The meeting involves the kind of mutual assessment that resembles two job applicants sizing each other up while trying to determine whether they're competing for the same position. The friendship that develops with this other young male is built on mutual incompetence and shared confusion about adult responsibilities. Neither of you is entirely certain about the proper protocols for adult bear interactions, territorial management, or hunting efficiency, but your combined ignorance creates a foundation for collaboration that proves mutually beneficial. You discover that having someone else who's equally confused about adult life makes the challenges of independence feel less overwhelming and more like shared adventures in figuring things out. Together, you perfect the art of looking intimidating while secretly hoping no one calls your bluff. This involves developing a repertoire of aggressive postures, territorial displays, and confident behaviors that project competence and authority, while internally hoping that no one tests your actual fighting capabilities or challenges your territorial claims in ways that would reveal the gap between your appearance and your abilities. Your collaborative approach to territorial management involves sharing information about hunting opportunities, weather patterns, and the movements of more experienced bears who might pose threats to your respective territories. This information sharing creates mutual advantages that help both of you navigate the complexities of independent survival while maintaining the fiction that you're each competent individual operators rather than confused young bears, who benefit significantly from having backup. The encounter with an older female bear provides education about rejection that proves to be both personally humbling and strategically informative. Your approach to the interaction involves what you consider to be impressive displays of hunting competence and territorial authority, but which the female apparently interprets as the eager fumbling of someone who's trying too hard to impress. Her response to your advances involves the kind of polite but firm dismissal that leaves no doubt about her assessment of your current prospects as a potential mate. The rejection stings, but provides valuable information about the standards and expectations that govern adult bear social dynamics. You learn that successful courtship requires more than basic survival competence and territorial establishment. It demands the kind of confidence, skill, and resource management that comes with years of successful independent operation. The encounter motivates you to focus on developing the advanced capabilities that might eventually make you a more attractive prospect to discriminating females. Your first real territorial dispute arises when a more experienced bear decides that your chosen territory overlaps with his established hunting grounds in ways that he finds unacceptable. The confrontation involves the kind of escalating tension that makes it clear that diplomatic solutions may not be available, and that your territorial claims may need to be defended through more direct means than you're currently prepared to handle. The discovery that running away is a valid strategy comes as something of a relief during this territorial dispute. Your tactical withdrawal from the confrontation allows you to maintain personal safety while acknowledging the practical realities of power dynamics in Arctic territorial management. You learn that there's wisdom in recognizing when you're outmatched, and that strategic retreat can be a form of victory if it preserves your ability to continue operating in the area under modified terms. The seasonal challenges that emerge during your bachelor pad era require constant adaptation of techniques and strategies that you're still in the process of mastering. Spring ice conditions demand different hunting approaches than winter techniques. Summer weather patterns affect territorial management in ways that require new planning strategies, and fall preparation involves resource management decisions that will determine your survival prospects during the coming winter. Your adaptation to seasonal changes involves a lot of trial and error, with emphasis on error, as you learn to modify your routines and expectations based on environmental conditions that you're still learning to predict and interpret. Each season brings new challenges that test your growing competence while revealing additional areas where your education remains incomplete. The summer hunting season provides particular challenges as ice conditions become less predictable and seal behavior changes in response to warmer temperatures and altered environmental conditions. Your hunting success rate fluctuates dramatically as you learn to adapt your techniques to conditions that require different approaches and expectations than the winter hunting methods that formed the foundation of your early education. The fall preparation period becomes a crucial test of your resource management skills as you attempt to build the kind of fat reserves and food stores that will sustain you through the winter hunting season. This requires balancing current consumption needs with future survival requirements, while maintaining the hunting success rates that will support both immediate and long-term nutritional goals. Your growing competence during this period is measured not just by hunting success rates and territorial security, but by your increasing ability to handle unexpected challenges and setbacks without panic or despair. You develop the kind of resilience that comes from successfully navigating a series of problems that initially seemed insurmountable, and the confidence that comes from proving to yourself that you can handle independent survival even when circumstances become difficult. The bachelor pad era concludes with your recognition that you've achieved basic competence in the fundamental requirements of adult bear existence. You've established territory, developed sustainable hunting routines, created social relationships that provide mutual support and information sharing, and demonstrated the ability to adapt to seasonal challenges and territorial pressures. While you're still far from the expert-level competence that characterizes truly successful adult bears, you've proven that you can survive independently and continue developing the advanced skills that will determine your long-term prospects in the Arctic ecosystem. Your territorial holdings may not be prime real estate, your hunting success rates may not be legendary, and your social status may not inspire envy among other bears, but you've achieved something that seemed uncertain during those first terrifying weeks of independence. You've survived, learned, and established yourself as a legitimate participant in the adult bear community. The fake-it-till-you-make-it strategy has evolved into genuine, if still developing, competence that provides a foundation for continued growth and eventual mastery of the complex skills that successful Arctic survival requires. At 5 years old, you've finally figured out this polar bear thing, mostly. You've grown into your paws, your hunting success rate has improved from embarrassing to adequate, and you've developed the kind of quiet confidence that comes from surviving several years of Arctic incompetence. The transformation from confused young adult to competent professional happens gradually, then suddenly, like snow melting in spring. One day you're still second-guessing every hunting decision and questioning whether you're qualified to call yourself a proper polar bear. And the next you're moving through your territory with the kind of assured efficiency that suggests you actually know what you're doing. The change isn't dramatic. There's no moment of sudden enlightenment or spectacular demonstration of newfound abilities, but the accumulation of small competencies eventually reaches a tipping point where confidence becomes justified rather than aspirational. Your hunting technique has evolved from the enthusiastic flailing of youth to something that resembles actual predatory skill. You've learned to read the subtle signs that indicate seal activity at breathing holes, to position yourself for maximum effectiveness during the brief moments when opportunity presents itself, and to execute the rapid, precise movements that separate successful hunts from educational failures. The breathing holes that once mocked your efforts with their stubborn emptiness now yield regular meals that support both your immediate needs and your growing territorial ambitions. The development of reliable hunting skills creates a positive feedback loop that affects every aspect of your Arctic existence. Success builds confidence. Confidence improves decision-making. Better decisions lead to more success, and the accumulating victories gradually transform your relationship with the environment from adversarial struggle to professional collaboration. You begin to feel like you belong in the Arctic landscape rather than like an uninvited guest who somehow managed to avoid being ejected. Your territory has expanded to include several prime hunting spots, which you defend with the weary resignation of someone who owns a nice lawn and knows teenagers are going to walk across it anyway. The territorial expansion happens through a combination of strategic planning, opportunistic acquisition, and the kind of gradual boundary adjustment that characterizes successful real estate development in environments where property rights are enforced through personal combat rather than legal documentation. The process of claiming additional territory requires careful assessment of both the strategic value of potential acquisitions and your ability to defend expanded holdings against other bears who might dispute your ownership claims. You learn to balance territorial ambition with defensive capability, avoiding the kind of overextension that could result in losing established territory while pursuing speculative gains in areas that might prove indefensible. Your territorial defense strategy develops into a sophisticated approach that combines deterrent displays, strategic positioning, and selective engagement based on careful assessment of potential opponents and the relative value of disputed areas. You become skilled at projecting the kind of confident authority that discourages casual challenges while maintaining the flexibility to withdraw from confrontations that exceed your defensive capabilities. You've become efficient at the daily routines of survival, checking breathing holes, assessing ice conditions, avoiding larger bears who still see you as a potential snack or threat. The routines that once required conscious planning and deliberate execution now operate with the kind of automatic competence that allows you to focus mental energy on higher-level strategic considerations rather than basic survival. Tasks. Your morning territory patrol evolves into a comprehensive intelligence-gathering operation that provides information about weather conditions, seal activity patterns, ice stability, potential threats, and territorial boundary status. You develop the ability to process this information rapidly and adjust your daily plans based on changing conditions, opportunities, and potential challenges that require tactical responses. The ice reading skills that you acquired through painful trial and error during your youth now operate with the kind of intuitive accuracy that allows you to navigate confidently across surfaces that would challenge less experienced bears. You can assess load-bearing capacity through visual inspection, predict how ice conditions will change with weather patterns, and identify the subtle signs that indicate dangerous areas or promising hunting opportunities. Weather prediction becomes one of your most valuable professional skills, developed through years of painful experience with Arctic meteorological surprises. You learn to read cloud formations, wind patterns, temperature changes, and atmospheric pressure variations that provide advance warning of conditions that could affect hunting success, territorial security, and personal safety. Your weather assessment capabilities allow you to plan hunting expeditions with confidence and seek appropriate shelter before dangerous conditions arrive. The seasonal migration patterns that once seemed random and unpredictable now reveal themselves as comprehensible cycles that you can anticipate and exploit for maximum hunting efficiency. You develop detailed knowledge of how seal behavior changes throughout the year, when and where the most productive hunting opportunities occur, and how to adjust your territorial positioning to take advantage of seasonal variations in prey availability. Your growing reputation among the local bear community reflects your transition from promising young bear to established territorial holder with demonstrable competence and reliable hunting success. Other bears begin to treat you with the kind of respectful caution that suggests they recognize your capabilities and territorial claims, while younger bears occasionally seek information or guidance about survival techniques and territorial management. The encounters with human researchers provide unexpected entertainment and mutual confusion that breaks up the routine of daily survival activities. The humans approach your territory with equipment that suggests they're conducting some kind of scientific study, but their behavior indicates they're as confused about appropriate protocols for bear-human interaction as you are about the purpose of their visit. Your first encounter with research scientists happens when a small group approaches your territory during your morning patrol, apparently attempting to collect data about bear behavior and ice conditions. Their presence creates a situation that requires careful assessment. They don't appear to pose an immediate threat, but they're clearly not part of the normal Arctic ecosystem, and their intentions remain unclear. The humans' approach to bear observation involves maintaining what they apparently consider a safe distance, while pointing various instruments in your direction and making notes on waterproof clipboards. Your response involves maintaining your normal routine while keeping them under observation, creating a situation where both species are studying each other with mutual curiosity and caution. The research team's equipment includes devices that seem designed to measure ice thickness, temperature variations, and other environmental conditions that affect your territory's hunting productivity. Their interest in your hunting grounds suggests they're studying the same factors that determine your survival success, though their methods involve significantly more technology and significantly less personal risk than your own research techniques. Your interaction with the research team develops into a pattern of mutual coexistence that benefits both parties. The humans gather their data about bear behavior and Arctic conditions while you continue your normal territorial activities, occasionally providing them with demonstrations of hunting techniques and territorial management that they apparently find scientifically valuable. The seasonal cycles that once presented constant challenges and learning opportunities now operate as predictable patterns that you can anticipate and prepare for with confidence. Spring ice breakup no longer catches you unprepared. Summer hunting challenges have become routine problems with established solutions. Fall preparation follows well-tested protocols, and winter survival operates according to strategies that you've refined through years of successful implementation. Your hunting success rate stabilizes at levels that provide reliable nutrition while allowing for the accumulation of fat reserves that support territorial expansion and defensive capabilities. You achieve the kind of consistent productivity that allows you to plan for future challenges rather than simply responding to immediate survival requirements. The social dynamics of adult bear community interaction become clearer as your territorial status and hunting reputation establish your position in the local hierarchy. You develop relationships with neighboring bears that balance competitive tension with mutual respect, creating a social environment that supports information sharing and collaborative territory management while maintaining appropriate boundaries and territorial integrity. Your professional competence extends beyond basic survival skills to include advanced capabilities like long-term resource management, strategic territorial planning, and social relationship management that characterize successful adult bears. You begin to operate with the kind of comprehensive understanding of Arctic survival that allows you to help younger bears while continuing to learn from more experienced operators. The development of genuine expertise in polar bear survival creates a foundation for the next phase of adult life, where basic competence evolves into mastery and survival skills become the platform for reproductive success and territorial dominance. You've achieved the kind of professional competence that makes survival routine rather than challenging, freeing mental and physical resources for the more complex demands of adult social interaction and reproductive competition. Spring arrives with its annual reminder that polar bears are supposed to reproduce, apparently. You encounter a female who seems marginally impressed by your hunting skills and only moderately concerned about your personality. Courtship among polar bears involves a lot of following at respectful distances and trying to look simultaneously non-threatening and genetically viable. The timing of romantic opportunity coincides with the seasonal hormonal changes that transform your normally straightforward existence into something that resembles a nature documentary filmed by someone with strong opinions about dramatic tension. Your body begins producing chemicals that affect your judgment in ways that make territorial management and hunting efficiency seem less important than impressing females who may or may not be interested in your romantic potential. The female in question appears in your territory during the early spring hunting season, apparently conducting her own survey of available males and territorial holdings. Her assessment process involves observing your hunting techniques, evaluating your territorial boundaries, and making judgments about your overall competence as a potential mate based on criteria that you can only guess at but desperately want to satisfy. Your approach to courtship involves what you hope appears to be casual confidence, but probably looks more like someone trying to impress a job interviewer while pretending the interview isn't important. You attempt to demonstrate your hunting prowess through elaborate displays of technique and efficiency, while simultaneously trying to appear relaxed and non-threatening in ways that suggest romantic potential rather than territorial aggression. The female's response to your courtship efforts involves the kind of careful evaluation that suggests she's comparing your performance to other males she's encountered during her seasonal mate selection tour. Her attention to your hunting demonstrations seems genuine, but her overall demeanor suggests she's conducting a comprehensive assessment that includes factors beyond your immediate territorial holdings and food acquisition capabilities. The courtship process requires maintaining the delicate balance between demonstrating competence and avoiding the kind of aggressive behavior that might be interpreted as threatening rather than attractive. You learn to modulate your territorial displays to suggest strength and confidence without crossing the line into intimidation or possessiveness that could drive away potential mates. Your romantic education includes learning to interpret the subtle signals that indicate female interest, tolerance, or rejection. The communication involved in polar bear courtship operates through a complex system of body language, scent markers, and behavioral cues that require careful attention and accurate interpretation to avoid embarrassing misunderstandings or dangerous miscalculations. The breeding season brings complications you hadn't considered, like the fact that other males also have opinions about your romantic prospects. The appearance of competing males in your territory transforms the courtship process from a simple matter of impressing a single female into a complex multi-party negotiation that involves territorial disputes, dominance hierarchies, and the kind of strategic thinking that makes chess look straightforward. Your first romantic competitor arrives during what you had optimistically considered a successful courtship period, apparently attracted by the same female whose attention you've been working to capture. The competing male's approach to the situation involves the kind of confident territoriality that suggests he's had more experience with romantic competition and considers your claim to be more negotiable than you had hoped. The ensuing territorial dispute evolves into what nature documentarians would probably describe as ritualized combat, but which feels more like an elaborate test of endurance, patience, and pain tolerance. The competition involves a series of increasingly aggressive displays designed to demonstrate dominance without necessarily resulting in serious injury to either participant, though the distinction between ritualized and genuinely dangerous sometimes becomes unclear during the heat of competition. You engage in the kind of ritualized combat that looks dramatic but mostly involves a lot of posturing and the occasional undignified tumble across the ice. The fighting techniques involved in romantic competition differ significantly from serious territorial defense, emphasizing display and endurance over decisive victory, since the goal is to impress females rather than eliminate opponents entirely. The combat itself proves to be more exhausting than dangerous, involving extended periods of wrestling, pushing, and strength testing that challenge your endurance and pain tolerance more than your survival instincts. You discover that fighting other bears requires a completely different skill set than hunting seals, involving psychological warfare, strategic patience, and the ability to maintain aggressive displays even when you're becoming increasingly tired and sore. Your romantic rival demonstrates superior experience with competitive fighting, but your territorial advantage and local knowledge of ice conditions provide strategic benefits that help balance the contest. The fight evolves into a test of determination and stamina rather than pure combat skill, with victory likely to go to whichever participant can maintain aggressive displays longest without admitting defeat. The female, whose attention sparked the competitive conflict, observes the combat with what appears to be scientific interest rather than romantic excitement. Her demeanor suggests she's evaluating both competitors' performance as indicators of genetic fitness and territorial capability, rather than enjoying the spectacle of males fighting for her attention. The resolution of the romantic competition comes through exhaustion rather than decisive victory, with both males eventually reaching the point where continued fighting requires more energy than either can spare for what amounts to a mating opportunity that may or may not result in successful reproduction. The competing male withdraws from your territory with the kind of dignified retreat that suggests he's conserving resources for other romantic opportunities rather than admitting permanent defeat. Your brief romantic success follows the resolution of the territorial competition, creating a partnership that lasts exactly as long as nature intended and not a moment longer. The relationship operates according to biological imperatives rather than emotional attachment, with both participants focused on reproductive success rather than long-term companionship or mutual support. The mating process itself proves to be more straightforward than the courtship and competition that preceded it, involving a brief period of cooperation that achieves its biological purpose with minimal drama or extended commitment. The female's approach to the relationship maintains the practical focus that characterized her initial mate selection process, treating reproduction as a necessary task rather than a romantic adventure. The return to solitary life happens with the same abrupt efficiency that characterized your mother's departure years earlier, leaving you with mixed feelings about the entire experience. The romantic interlude provides satisfaction in terms of biological success and competitive victory, but also highlights the temporary and goal-oriented nature of polar bear relationships. Your reflection on the temporary nature of polar bear relationships reveals that reproductive success represents just one component of adult life rather than its primary focus. The energy and resources devoted to courtship and mating competition must be balanced against territorial maintenance, hunting efficiency, and survival preparation that determine long-term success rather than seasonal reproductive achievements. The experience of romantic competition and temporary partnership provides valuable education about adult social dynamics, competitive strategies, and resource management under pressure. You learn that reproductive success requires different skills than survival competence, and that seasonal mating activities must be integrated with year-round territorial and hunting responsibilities. Your preparation for the cycle to repeat next year involves incorporating lessons learned from romantic competition into your territorial management and personal development strategies. The experience suggests that future reproductive success will depend on continued improvement in hunting efficiency, territorial expansion, and competitive fighting capabilities that make you a more attractive mate choice relative to other males. The post-mating period requires readjustment to solitary life and refocus on the territorial and hunting activities that provide the foundation for long-term survival and future reproductive opportunities. You return to the daily routines of professional polar bear existence with renewed appreciation for the relative simplicity of survival challenges compared to the complex social dynamics of romantic competition. Your assessment of the entire romantic experience concludes that while mating represents an important component of adult life, It operates as a seasonal supplement to, rather than replacement, for the territorial management and hunting activities that determine overall life success. The temporary nature of polar bear relationships means that reproductive achievements must be balanced against the individual competence that supports both survival and future mating opportunities. The breeding season's conclusion leaves you with enhanced understanding of adult social dynamics, improved competitive fighting skills, and realistic expectations about the role of romantic relationships in polar bear existence. You've successfully navigated the complexities of courtship, competition, and reproduction while maintaining the territorial holdings and hunting capabilities that provide the foundation for continued success in subsequent seasons. Your territorial holdings emerge from the breeding season intact and possibly enhanced, since your successful defense against romantic competition has established your reputation as a formidable opponent who can protect valuable resources. The experience provides additional credibility in future territorial disputes and may improve your attractiveness to potential mates in subsequent breeding seasons. The social relationships that develop during the breeding season create ongoing connections with other bears that may affect future territorial negotiations, hunting cooperation, and competitive interactions. Your performance during romantic competition becomes part of your reputation within the local bear community, influencing how other bears approach interactions with you in both competitive and cooperative contexts. The seasonal cycle of romance and return to solitary life becomes integrated into your annual routine as a predictable pattern that requires preparation, resource management, and strategic planning similar to other seasonal challenges like weather changes and prey migration patterns. You develop the ability to anticipate and prepare for breeding season demands while maintaining focus on the year-round activities that determine overall survival success. Your professional competence as an adult bear now includes reproductive success, as well as territorial management and hunting efficiency, representing the complete skill set required for comprehensive success in Arctic polar bear existence. The integration of romantic competition into your annual routine marks your full transition from survival-focused young adult to reproductively successful mature bear with established territorial holdings and demonstrated competitive capabilities. At 15, you've become one of those old bears that younger bears eye nervously while trying to figure out if you're past your prime or just conserving energy for maximum intimidation impact. Your hunting style has evolved from enthusiastic fumbling to economical precision. You waste no movement, expend minimal energy, and approach each breathing hole with the patient resignation of someone who's done this roughly 3,000 times before. The transformation from prime adult to distinguished elder happens so gradually that you barely notice it yourself, until one day you catch your reflection in a particularly clear patch of meltwater and realize that somewhere along the way you've acquired the kind of weathered gravitas that younger bears instinctively respect. Your fur has developed the slightly grizzled appearance that comes from decades of Arctic living, and your movements carry the deliberate confidence of someone who's learned to conserve energy for situations that actually require it. The grizzled quality of your fur tells stories that you've forgotten you lived through. Scars from territorial disputes have created permanent patterns in your coat, marking the locations where other bears' claws left their signatures during negotiations about boundary disputes and resource allocation. A particularly prominent scar across your left shoulder serves as a reminder of a spring encounter with a particularly aggressive young male who learned that experience often trumps enthusiasm in matters of territorial authority. Your physical presence has developed the kind of solid, unmistakable authority that doesn't require demonstration to be convincing. where younger bears move with the restless energy of individuals still proving themselves, you've achieved the kind of stillness that suggests massive reserves of controlled power. Your bulk has settled into the impressive proportions that come from decades of successful hunting, and your posture communicates the relaxed confidence of someone who's handled every conceivable Arctic emergency at least twice. The nervous way younger bears observe you provides constant entertainment during your daily territorial patrols. They maintain what they clearly consider a respectful distance while trying to assess whether you represent a genuine threat or simply an impressive relic of previous generations. Their uncertainty works in your favor, since your reputation now does most of the territorial defense work that once required active intimidation and occasional physical confrontation. You've developed the ability to project menace through sheer presence rather than aggressive display. Young bears approaching your territory find themselves inexplicably uncomfortable, as if they're trespassing in a library run by someone who disapproves of noise. Your territorial boundaries have become less about marked lines in the ice and more about zones of psychological influence that extend well beyond your physical location. The younger bear's assessment process involves a lot of elaborate casual browsing near your territorial edges, as if they're window shopping for territory, while trying not to appear interested in anything you might consider worth defending. They approach with the kind of studied nonchalance that suggests they're conducting scientific research about ice conditions rather than testing your willingness to defend valuable hunting grounds. Your response to these reconnaissance missions involves the kind of calculated indifference that keeps younger bears guessing about your capabilities and intentions. You acknowledge their presence with the minimal attention you might give to mildly interesting weather phenomena, neither encouraging their proximity nor actively discouraging their presence, but maintaining the kind of watchful awareness that suggests you're keeping track of their activities for future reference. Your hunting technique has achieved the kind of refined efficiency that comes from having performed the same basic actions thousands of times under every conceivable Arctic condition. You no longer waste energy on elaborate stalking approaches or dramatic displays of predatory prowess. Instead, you arrive at breathing holes with the methodical competence of someone clocking in for a job they've mastered so thoroughly that excellence has become routine rather than challenging. When younger bears persist in their territorial challenges despite your initial warnings, your response escalates with the kind of measured authority that suggests you're more annoyed than threatened. You've learned to project the impression that fighting you would be possible but inadvisable, like challenging someone to arm wrestle when they're clearly stronger but too polite to mention it. The escalation process follows a well-established script that allows challenging bears multiple opportunities to reconsider their position before things progress to actual physical confrontation. You begin with the kind of pointed attention that suggests you've noticed their activities and have opinions about their appropriateness. This progresses to more active territorial displays that demonstrate your size, reach, and general capacity for violence without actually threatening specific harm. The few young bears who fail to recognize the wisdom of strategic retreat discover that your age has refined rather than diminished your combat effectiveness. Your fighting style now emphasizes leverage, timing, and experience over raw strength and enthusiasm. You've learned to end territorial disputes quickly and decisively, using minimum force to achieve maximum deterrent effect for future challenges. Your combat technique has evolved into something that resembles martial arts more than wrestling, focusing on using opponents' energy and momentum against them rather than overpowering them through brute force. Years of territorial defense have taught you exactly where to apply pressure, how to use ice conditions to your advantage, and when to shift from defensive to offensive positioning for maximum psychological impact. The resolution of territorial disputes typically involves your opponent's recognition that continuing the conflict would require more energy investment than the potential territorial gains justify. Your reputation for quick, efficient dispute resolution spreads through the local bear community, reducing the frequency of challenges and making your territorial defense increasingly automatic. Seasonal patterns that once required careful attention and constant adaptation now operate as predictable routines that you can navigate with minimal conscious planning. Spring ice breakup, summer hunting challenges, fall preparation, and winter survival all follow familiar scripts that you've performed successfully so many times that they've become automatic responses to environmental cues. Your seasonal preparation now operates with the kind of effortless competence that comes from having successfully navigated dozens of identical cycles. You anticipate ice conditions, weather patterns, and prey behavior changes weeks in advance, allowing you to position yourself for optimal advantage during seasonal transitions that catch less experienced bears unprepared. Spring preparation begins in late winter when you start monitoring ice conditions for signs of the coming breakup. You adjust your territorial positioning to account for changing ice dynamics, identify backup hunting locations for periods when primary spots become inaccessible, and begin the gradual metabolic adjustments that will support increased hunting activity during the spring feeding season. Summer territorial management involves shifting to hunting grounds that remain productive when ice conditions become challenging, developing strategies for dealing with increased competition from other bears who are forced into smaller, viable hunting areas, and maintaining adequate nutrition during periods when hunting success becomes more dependent on skill and timing than on simple persistence. Fall preparation requires the most intensive resource management as you work to accumulate the fat reserves that will sustain you through potential winter hunting difficulties. Your preparation strategy balances immediate nutrition needs with long-term storage requirements, while maintaining territorial holdings that will provide winter hunting opportunities if environmental conditions cooperate. Winter survival has become so routine that you barely think about the challenges that once required constant attention and energy. Your territory selection, shelter preparation, and hunting strategies all operate according to established protocols that account for the full range of winter conditions you might encounter. Your weather prediction capabilities have evolved into something that resembles supernatural knowledge to younger bears who haven't yet learned to read the subtle indicators that forecast Arctic conditions. You can sense approaching storms hours before they arrive, predict ice conditions based on temperature and wind patterns, anticipate seasonal changes that affect hunting success and territorial security, and plan activities around weather windows that less experienced bears don't recognize until conditions have already changed. Your weather assessment process integrates multiple information sources in ways that provide remarkably accurate forecasts for local conditions. You monitor cloud formations, wind direction changes, temperature fluctuations, atmospheric pressure variations, and animal behavior patterns that collectively provide advance warning of significant weather events. The accuracy of your weather predictions has become legendary among local bears, many of whom have learned to observe your behavior for indicators about appropriate responses to changing conditions. When you begin seeking shelter or adjusting territorial positioning, other bears take notice and often modify their own activities accordingly. Your weather preparation strategies account for both immediate tactical needs and longer-term strategic positioning. You maintain multiple shelter options that provide protection under different conditions, store emergency food reserves in locations that remain accessible during severe weather, and plan hunting activities around weather windows that maximize success probability while minimizing exposure to dangerous conditions. The occasional mentorship of confused young bears provides unexpected satisfaction during your later years, though you approach the teaching role with the reluctant resignation of someone who's been drafted into service rather than volunteering enthusiastically. Younger bears sometimes seek your guidance about hunting techniques, territorial management, or survival strategies, and you find yourself sharing knowledge with the gruff efficiency of someone who's learned valuable lessons through painful experience. Your teaching style involves the kind of practical advice that focuses on avoiding mistakes rather than achieving excellence. You explain hunting techniques in terms of what not to do, territorial management in terms of which conflicts to avoid, and survival strategies in terms of which risks aren't worth taking. Your wisdom comes flavored with the kind of hard-earned cynicism that younger bears initially resist but eventually learn to appreciate. The mentorship opportunities usually arise when younger bears find themselves in situations that exceed their current problem-solving capabilities. They approach you with the kind of desperate hope that suggests they've exhausted other options and are willing to risk rejection in exchange for potentially life-saving advice. Your initial response to requests for guidance typically involves assessment of whether the requesting bear is genuinely interested in learning or simply looking for easy solutions to complex problems. You've learned to distinguish between bears who are willing to invest effort in skill development and those who want shortcuts that don't actually exist in Arctic survival. The teaching process involves demonstrations that emphasize technique efficiency, explanation of decision-making frameworks that help young bears develop judgment rather than simply memorizing procedures, and sharing of cautionary stories that illustrate consequences of common mistakes without providing too much detail about your own learning experiences. Your advice delivery style has developed into something that resembles gruff kindness, providing genuinely helpful information while maintaining the kind of emotional distance that discourages young bears from becoming overly dependent on external guidance. You want them to succeed, but you also want them to develop the self-reliance that Arctic survival ultimately requires. The satisfaction you derive from successful mentorship comes partly from seeing young bears avoid mistakes that you made during your own development, and partly from the confirmation that your accumulated knowledge has value beyond your own survival needs. Successful teaching provides a form of legacy that extends your influence beyond your individual territorial holdings and lifetime. The physical changes that accompany aging require constant adjustments to strategies and techniques that once operated automatically. Your joints move with slightly less flexibility than they once did. Your recovery time from exertion has increased. Your tolerance for extended periods of uncomfortable positioning has decreased, and your overall energy reserves require more careful management to maintain peak performance when needed. Your adaptation to physical aging involves shifting from techniques that rely on raw athletic ability to methods that emphasize experience, planning, and strategic positioning. You learn to choose hunting locations that minimize travel distances, select territorial holdings that provide maximum defensive advantage, time your activities to avoid unnecessary energy expenditure during adverse conditions, and develop backup strategies that account for reduced physical capabilities. The joint stiffness that develops after decades of Arctic living requires modifications to hunting positions and movement patterns. You learn to warm up more gradually before intensive activities, choose positions that don't stress problematic joints during long waits, and develop alternative techniques that achieve the same results through different physical approaches. Your energy management strategies become increasingly sophisticated as you learn to balance activity levels with recovery requirements. You develop better awareness of your daily energy budget, plan activities to avoid peaks and valleys that could leave you vulnerable during critical moments, and maintain reserves that allow for unexpected challenges without compromising routine survival needs. The respect that younger bears show for your experience and territorial holdings reflects your transition from active competitor to established authority figure. Your reputation now precedes you in social interactions, and other bears approach you with the kind of cautious deference that suggests they recognize your status as someone who's successfully navigated decades of Arctic survival. Your social position within the local bear community has evolved into something resembling elder statesman, where your opinions carry weight in territorial disputes. Your presence influences the behavior of other bears in ways that go beyond direct territorial control, and your example provides a model for successful Arctic survival that other bears study and attempt to emulate. The elder statesman role involves occasional arbitration of disputes between younger bears, particularly when territorial conflicts threaten to disrupt the broader community's hunting success or territorial stability. Your intervention in such disputes typically involves the kind of practical wisdom that helps all parties find mutually acceptable solutions without requiring extensive combat or permanent territorial changes. Your influence on community dynamics extends beyond formal dispute resolution to include the kind of behavioral modeling that helps maintain social order among competing territorial holders. Your example of efficient territorial management, successful hunting, and appropriate response to challenges provides a template that other bears can follow to achieve their own survival goals. Your later years unfold in the comfortable rhythm of someone who has mastered the impossible art of thriving in the Arctic. You've claimed prime coastal territory where seals follow predictable patterns and ice remains reliable. Real estate that represents decades of strategic expansion and successful defense against envious challengers. Your territorial holdings encompass what any bear would recognize as Arctic luxury. Multiple productive breathing holes that function under various conditions, natural shelters for storm protection, reliable freshwater access, and defensive positioning that channels potential challengers into manageable encounters while providing escape routes when discretion proves wiser than confrontation. Each breathing hole represents years of accumulated knowledge about seal behavior, ice formation patterns, and optimal hunting positions. Your territory includes backup hunting locations, ensuring adequate nutrition even when primary spots become temporarily unproductive. The defensive advantages reflect sophisticated strategic thinking, accessibility for your needs balanced with protection against threats. Your daily routine operates with smooth efficiency born from decades of refinement. Morning patrols follow optimized routes providing maximum intelligence with minimum energy expenditure. Hunting schedules align with seal behavior patterns, ice conditions, weather effects, and your own energy cycles. You hunt when conditions offer maximum success probability, no longer feeling the desperate pressure to maximize every opportunity that characterized your uncertain younger years. You watch younger bears repeat your ancient mistakes with the resigned patience of someone who knows most lessons cannot be taught, only learned through personal disaster. Their overconfidence leads to territorial overextension, their hunting enthusiasm wastes energy on low-probability attempts, their social mistakes escalate unnecessary conflicts. When you bother offering advice, it focuses on helping them avoid the worst consequences, rather than preventing educational experiences entirely. Your gruff wisdom, flavored with practical cynicism, emphasizes realistic expectations and efficient techniques. Most young bears ignore your counsel until experience proves you right, then seek your guidance more actively. Your relationship with younger bears resembles a tired professor dealing with enthusiastic students who think they've discovered ancient wisdom. You tolerate their excitement about basic survival techniques, while occasionally offering corrections that prevent dangerous misconceptions about Arctic survival requirements. The Arctic remains as indifferent as ever, but you've achieved peace with its particular hostility. What once seemed actively malevolent now feels like a demanding but fair employer who rewards competence and punishes carelessness with consistent natural laws. You've learned to work within the system rather than fighting against it. This philosophical shift represents evolution from viewing the environment as an opponent to understanding it as operating conditions requiring appropriate responses. The cold, wind, ice, and scarcity that once felt like personal attacks now seem like natural phenomena that can be anticipated, prepared for, and managed through proper technique. Your relationship with Arctic conditions has developed into professional respect between worthy opponents. You acknowledge the environment's power to create dangerous situations while maintaining confidence in your ability to respond effectively to most conditions you're likely to encounter. Seasonal cycles that once presented constant challenges now operate as familiar rhythms, providing structure to your annual routine. Spring preparation, summer hunting, fall resource accumulation, and winter survival follow established patterns you navigate with confidence while making minor adjustments for yearly variations. Your seasonal management achieves sophisticated integration, optimizing performance across the entire annual cycle, rather than simply responding to immediate requirements. You plan spring activities to support summer hunting success, manage summer resources to enable fall preparation, and conduct fall preparation, ensuring winter survival while positioning for following spring opportunities. The contemplative periods filling your less active days provide opportunities for reflection on Arctic life patterns and your place in the larger ecosystem. You observe the constant cycle of birth, growth, struggle, success, decline, and replacement characterizing all Arctic wildlife, finding satisfaction in having successfully navigated your own journey through this cycle. Your ecosystem perspective helps you understand your role as predator and prey, territorial holder and community member, experienced survivor and potential teacher. This understanding provides context for individual achievements while connecting you to larger patterns of Arctic life. Some days you hunt, some days you nap, and some days you simply exist in the vast white expanse. Quote, "A successful example of evolution's ongoing experiment in making things that can survive where nothing should. The freedom to choose daily activities based on inclination rather than desperate necessity represents a primary benefit of having achieved Arctic survival mastery. Your hunting activities operate on schedules prioritizing efficiency and energy conservation over maximum food acquisition. The luxury of choice in daily activities represents success few Arctic residents achieve. The ability to decide whether to hunt, rest, patrol, or simply observe based on having sufficient reserves and reliable skills. Rest periods have evolved from desperate recovery to pleasant interludes, providing opportunities for observation, reflection, and enjoyment of Arctic beauty you previously lacked leisure to appreciate. These periods contribute to overall well-being and help maintain psychological resilience that long-term Arctic survival requires. As another day concludes, you settle onto your favorite ice floe while Arctic sunset paints the sky in pink and gold that seems inappropriate for such harsh landscape. This carefully selected perch serves as your outdoor office, providing strategic advantages for observing threats and opportunities while offering comfort features making extended contemplation pleasant. Tomorrow will bring familiar challenges, breathing holes to watch, territory to maintain, seals to catch if you're lucky. The predictability provides comfortable certainty, allowing you to enjoy today's sunset without anxiety about future challenges or regret about past failures. Tonight, you're a polar bear who's figured out how to be exactly that, which is more than most creatures can say. Your success encompasses mastery of hunting techniques providing reliable nutrition, territorial management, ensuring secure resource access, social skills enabling effective bear interaction, weather prediction capabilities allowing environmental preparation, and psychological resilience, enabling long-term survival in demanding conditions. The aurora borealis flickers overhead like nature's screensaver, providing atmospheric entertainment accompanying evening reflection. You close your eyes with satisfied exhaustion of someone who's successfully completed another day of being magnificently, boringly alive, achieving extraordinary results through steady application of well-developed skills rather than constant drama. Your final conscious thought acknowledges achieving something rare and valuable, a successful life measured not by external standards, but by figuring out how to be exactly what you are, where you are, for as long as you've been given to do it.